A very good evening to you and welcome to Power Brief on this 14th day of the month of October, the year 2021. Thursdays are usually days with long political debates, and just on the course of the day, Justice Jairus Nga of the High Court has termed Huduma numbers null and void. And Mr. Kosgei, looking at me from the other side, is trying to signal that null and void debates have gone so high. Tonight, we are joined by Advocate Philip Mwangale, who is a leadership and governance consultant. We are also joined by Mr. Edgar Kosgei, who is our resident analyst, a policy and a political analyst. We are also joined by Mr. Vincent Ono, who is a political policy analyst and a legal scholar. My name is Cornelius Omusa, and I welcome you to this discussion as we are going to look into some of the circumstances and things that are surrounding the 2022 general election that is just a few months, 9 months away. Join this conversation, which is also live on our Facebook page, KAK TV Kenya, and YouTube is KAK TV Kenya. Gentlemen, welcome to Power Brief tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Kosgei, sharp as usual. Mr. Mwangale, Mr. Vincent, it is your first time to be here tonight. And tonight we begin by looking into something before we get into politics, Mr. Mwangale. Null and void seems to be the term nowadays. Things that are happening in the executive arm of the government, when it gets to the judiciary, it's usually thrown back. And there are cries, especially some have started coming from the public, some blaming the judiciary, some blaming the executive. But let's now look at it from the legal perspective. The Huduma number, this bill, the data protection bill, was signed in the year 2019, that is on November 8th. And this process had begun prior to November. According to legal processes, is the judiciary wrong or is the executive wrong in this matter?
First, I think my sentiments, just like they were for BBI around the Huduma registration and the Huduma numbers, were the same, and they have been constant over the years since we first heard about Huduma number. But most critical to note is the fact that the government of Kenya, and by government I mean the executive, has been on a bulldozing spree. So whether there are decisions, whether there are plans in consonance with the constitution or not, they will seek to have their way. And that is what you saw with the Huduma number. It was almost getting to a point of intimidation and threats. If you don't register, if you don't have a Huduma number, then you will be denied services. On the outset, the plan itself looked like a good thing. I mean, government wanted to harmonize the delivery of services and the data that it has over its citizens. That appeared to be a good thing. But the mechanics around the Huduma registration and Huduma numbers were problematic. The right to privacy is anchored in our constitution, and it is not something you can tinker with willy-nilly, and this is what the government had tried to do. You cannot collect such critical data without working within the data protection laws that we have, and that is what the court has ruled on today. I'm yet to read the full judgment, but the upshot of that decision is that the Huduma bill registration exercise goes against the data protection laws that we have, anchored first in the Constitution and the Data Protection Act.
So many thanks, Mr. Mwangale. Mr. Vincent Ono, you seem to have a different opinion or stand towards it. This war between the executive and the judiciary, it's making even a number of people to question these two arms of the government. Are they competing, or if there is one that is trying to bulldoze the other one, just as Advocate Mwangale has put it?
You remember the famous statement, we shall revisit. When you cocksure that you'll revisit when it comes to my term, I can also have a way on how to revisit about any issue that you bring to me. I would say that the king's handlers have left the king naked. The legal advisors to the president ought to have done their assignment and ought to have done their work well before the inception of the Huduma number, or before the process kicked off, the presidential advisors, those who are in, have the mandate of advising him in terms of legal issues, ought to have told him whether that thing or the process would continue or if could not continue. When you look at so many issues that this executive has taken to judiciary or to court, it has lost almost every case that is taken to court. And so it makes you wonder whether each and every one of them is revisiting. Because the other day it was BBI, today it is a Huduma number, and so many other cases that the executive has lost. You remember also the Badi issue, where the court declared that he is not supposed to be in cabinet. And you wonder whether the judiciary is revisiting or judiciary is actually following the law and giving justice to the people.
So you've remained in between. Let's hear from Mr. Kosgei, the null and void scenarios that are becoming quite too many each and every day whenever something is happening. And remember, this is something that happens. The government has spent, the executive arm has spent close to billions of shillings, not one project, more than one project. Where is this scenario leading the country to?
Null and void has been a term that we've been using in the country for the longest time now, until you have called the two brothers Null and his brother Void, because of what they have been doing in the public sector. When you look at what they were trying to do, is so noble that every country that is advanced in the world, that is how they are run. If you swipe your number in an advanced country like the US, every detail comes out, even where you come from, your brothers, your sisters, who is related to, like that. The central system in advanced countries have just one number. It's called the social number, right? Social security number. When you swipe it, you will have every detail that you're supposed to have. That is the direction that Kenya should be going. And when I saw Huduma number coming, I said, if I went to school, let's say I went to the UON, and I went to a certain primary school down there, and I have this card, I have an NHIF. All those details will come out when you just key in my registration number. That is the Kenya that we wanted, and that is the direction that we wanted. But now, a Huduma number that was illegal, that was not anchored in law, was formulated. And the people who were running the Huduma number did not pay attention to the details. I hear there's this company that was doing the registration in Kenya. It was also doing registration in Uganda. The press in Uganda has reported. And Uganda's Huduma number has not come out. Kenya's Huduma number is something that we are moving past. I hear it is a project of the government, and the expenditure is not even visible. You know, I think Parliament should revisit this and tell the public which direction we are going. And the Auditor General should also report to us what really happened with the Huduma funds.
So your concern, before we move into something else, is the expenditure or the data protection law, as Justice Jairus Nga termed it in the morning.
Omuse,
Where is your
we were headed
concern?
in the right direction. I liked the Huduma number idea. That is my concern. And the Huduma number idea would have been the best. If you go to NHIF would show your details. When I go to immigration right now, they'll ask me for my details instead of just putting a thumbprint and your details come out. We should head in that direction. But look at how null and void. Look at what they are doing.
I think it's also important to buttress his point on the amounts of money that have been used on this exercise. Over 20 billion shillings that cannot be accounted for. Over 20 billion shillings that only produced the presidents, the first ladies, and I think a few members of the executives Huduma numbers. you cannot justify that.
You can't.
Many thanks. Now, that is a discussion for another day. Probably after all of you shall have read that judgment, and probably after having sought a number of information from the other side, we'll still converge here and try to look into what is likely to be done to correct this issue so that it now moves to the right direction. There is something concerning the registration of the new voters. The IBC 2 weeks ago came out and talked of the projection of the numbers of the new voters that they want to enlist, and they talked of the youth. But 1 week down the line, the percentage, the projection was way below the targeted number, and probably after the 30 days, they could not even have reached a 16th, not even an eighth of it. And the number of issues that are coming up in relation to this. What are some of these possible causes of defiance that people are not going to register? I don't know whether Mwangala has registered, Vincent, and also Mheshimiwa Kosgei on the other side. What could these reasons for the possible defiance?
One, I must clarify that I'm a registered voter, and I would urge Kenyans to register because it's your civic duty. It's your participation in governance begins at that point. But one of the things that is very clear in this age is that voter apathy has really gone high. And there are two reasons for that. One, it's because governance is not working as it ought to, because the leaders who have been elected by people have gone after their own interests and are not really serving Wananchi. Number two, elections have not been free and fair. So people are justifying, the decision not to register and vote on the grounds that, anyway, why vote? Because somebody else will decide who will actually emerge as winner. So those two things. So there's voter apathy. Number two, there is the place of the IEBC. And I think what they are doing and their conduct in the past few months vindicates my assertion that the IEBC, the Commission, has been treating their role as an independent election day and boundaries commission, which is unfortunate. Because if you are an independent electoral body, then you must make sure that you're putting in place systems that will deliver free and fair elections. So if we have a scenario where commissioners are sitting high and lofty at anniversary towers, they are not going to the ground, because I would imagine that they will take the initiative and tour this country. They cannot use the excuse of funds because I believe to that level they are funded.
Remember they've talked of being underfunded.
Yes, and I understand that, but I'm talking about taking the initiative to go around the country. It does not take much. And let people see that the commission itself is invested in preparing for a credible election. The IEBC has not yet demonstrated to Kenyans that they can actually deliver an election that Kenyans will be proud of. So it is not just about voter apathy, it is also about the role of the IEBC and what they are doing to ensure that Kenyans actually trust the process. So if they don't do that, we will get over with 30 days and we will have a dismal record or register of voters that will not reflect the view of Kenyans in 2022. The other bit also that is unfortunate is that the place of political parties in civic education and in ensuring the health of our democratic system is lost. So political parties should be engaged in civic education because it is also in their interest to have voters register across board. So we have...
so posters alone are not enough because...
the posters are campaigns. They are campaign posters.
They have been sending posters, go register.
No. I mean, it looks as though they are trying to encourage people to register, but what they're doing is campaigning ahead of time. I would also mention the bit about these political bigwigs encouraging people from their tribal backyards to register. Not because they want those people to make a decision that will benefit this country, but because they want numbers in their tribal backyards, which is so unfortunate on many fronts.
Thank you. Mr. Vincent, still on the same line as to what Mwangala has just spoken about, the defiance from the new voters, that is to the IEBC. Some are connecting these defiance also that the entry of politicians sending posters all over Vincent Ono for MP constituency XYZ, go and vote. People are saying that one has actually made the new voters not to really participate in it because they have related this exercise with politicians, and just as Mr. Mwangele talked of, the politicians have not been delivering. Could that be another possible reason? That politicians could keep off and then maybe to leave the IBC to do it?
Oh, okay, first of all, who are these people that are being registered? The 6 million people that are being registered.
Targeted, not being registered.
That are targeted, that are to register. These are the youth. And when you look at this country right now, in terms of employment, who are the most unemployed people? The youth. You find it difficult for a young man who hustles or tries to get their mean in a Mathare, a person who works, for example, in a day to get 300 or 400, go feed himself and the family, leaving that work, going to register, knowing very well that he may spend the whole day in the process, coming back in the evening, nothing to eat. Most of them live from hand to mouth. On the issue of voter apathy as well, it's not about politicians hijacking the process, because all along, even in the previous years or previous election period, politicians have always educated people to register. What has made it more viral as it may look on social media, it's because nowadays we don't have those rallies and campaigns because of the corona issue. But that doesn't mean that people are boycotting or there is an apathy because there is suspicion that politicians are hijacking the process.
Thank you so
That's
much.
what it is.
Still on IBC, Mr. Edgar,
Yes.
the issue of the funding. There's a time when the IBC was verifying these the BBI signatures.
Yes.
They requested for some figures,
Funds.
some amount of billions, and some people tried to calculate. And then it was found out that in one person, just to do the verification, some thousands of shillings were being used. Recently, before they began the listing of the new voters, Chebukati and his team talked of underfunding, and they didn't really come out to talk of maybe of the deficit, and they also cried foul that the government has told them not to receive any external funding unless the funding has been approved by the executive. Two things here when it comes to funding. This external funding that the executive is actually denying the IBC the chance to receive the money directly, is executive justified? One, and then two, don't you think that the outcry is about IBC spending thousands of shillings on one person or billions of shillings, which is not justified, another recipe for confusion as the country moves to the elections of the 2022?
Umuse, when you talked about that, you reminded me of budget making process. And IEBC is an institution of the government, and the institution of the government funded by the government. And the budget making process goes through Parliament. And the eyes of Parliament looks through the budgetary process, and they are the ones who come up with public participation to come up with a budget. When Chebukati asks for 40 billion shillings, then the budgetary process should kickstart that, and it is Parliament to be asked for that money. So when we sit outside and speculate and say Chebukati is spending such and such amount of money on this and this and this, the Auditor General is also here to see whether it is reasonably being used, that money that has been given to the IEBC. Money coming from outside also is monitored by the government because it is a government institution. And ultimately, the president is the one responsible for the running of the IEBC. Yet we say it is independent. It is an independent commission. Matiang'i will ask independence from
according
from what?
to the law, and according to what Mwangale will say tomorrow, and he can even sue you.
Yes.
Just
He
about to
will
say.
tell you it is independent. Electoral and Boundaries Commission.
Let them get their,
Go on.
let them get their money then. They depend on the allocation by Parliament. The IEBC will stop if it becomes independent from the executive and from Parliament. It will stop. Otherwise, the money coming from outside should be monitored by the Auditor General, who monitors every aspect, in whichever direction of government. So we cannot say that.
Thank you.
Back to just one moment. The voters not registering in mass. You had asked that question. I wanted to answer and say that some people are expecting the system to give them the government. So why would I go and vote when the system is there to give me presidency? So we should demystify voting, and we should tell Kenyans that the system is not there, that your vote counts, and they should go out and they should go and vote and register to vote. Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Mwangale, this issue of independence, some people question, it is independence from who or from what? Because as Kosgei was trying to talk about it, IBC as a body within government sits down and then says we want to request from organizations so and so, which has requested for organizations to bid. Probably there is 500 million. And then they do the bidding, then they receive the money. But here, there is this issue that it must pass through the executive.
Omuse, we, and I've said this before, we say the law is very clear. It is your site that we cannot guarantee.
Yes.
Because while it is so clear to us that we have independent institutions, some people do not actually see that those institutions need to be independent. And it's not, it's as clear as the IBC is independent from the executive, it is independent from Parliament, but also interdependent. There is the doctrine of interdependence around
which the term interdependent seems to really be ignored by so many players.
Yes, and the reason why you see this tussle is because the IBC plays a very critical role in installing governments of the day. The executive would want to control the funding in the IBC so that the IBC remains subservient to the executive. Parliament will want to take a backseat because they also have interests in making sure that the electoral process is not free and fair. So when I had the likes of Matiang'i asking independent from who or what is driving that question is the fact that they do not understand why an electoral body can work and operate within the confines of the law that establishes that commission, because they are used to deciding what amounts of money they will give to this project, what amounts of money they will give to this parastatal. But that is not the way we can we should deal with such independent commissions, and they were actually established as independent for that reason, that we could get people in the executive who would want to muzzle the IBC, who would want to have the IBC as an appendage of the executive. When we're talking about funding from the IBC, one of the things I fault IBC...
foreign funding and internal.
Yes, I'm talking about the internal funding, and Edgar's mentioned about the budgeting process. I fault the commission for this, that they only come out to speak about the deficiencies in funding around the general elections. You have had for some of the commissioners, over close to 10 years in that commission. You cannot only come out when you are faced with an exercise. The commission itself does its budgeting process. They do their casting, and they present these budgets to Parliament. So the moment Parliament does not approve your budget, come out and speak about these things. Don't wait for the general elections and then come out and tell us we will not do this because we do not have funding. When it comes to foreign funding, it's not new. Across the world, electoral bodies have well-meaning organizations and people who are invested in the health of democratic spaces across the country and the health of electoral systems. So it is not new that IEBC could receive foreign funding. The only thing that needs to be watched after is these sources, so that you do not have people who then have vested interests following their funding. You do not have strings attached.
So on the second part of the show, you'll tell us, sorry, if someone can spend their money without having interest. We go for a quick commercial break. As we return, we'll now be looking into the political players and some of the calculations that they've been having. In the first part, we've tried to look into some of the logistics, some of the legal, and actually the public administrative of this procedure moving into 2022. Keep it here on CAK TV.
Kwenye makala ya kwanza ya jukwaa la moderator.
Tunapojiweka mbele katika mambo yote tunayofanya, huwa tumeenda kinyume na matakwa ya Mwenyezi Mungu. Hasira moja iliyokuwa na Mungu ni kuhusu watu wanaojipenda. Kazi ya Mungu inapaswa kupewa kipaumbele. Hivyo kuna uwezekano ya kwamba tukisikiza ushauri wa Mungu kwa njia inayofaa, tutakuwa sawa kwake, sababu Mungu ana rehema.
Kuanzia Jumapili hii saa 1:30 jioni na kila Jumapili ya kwanza ya kila mwezi, ungana naye moderator wa kanisa la PCEA Mchungaji Thegu Mutahi kwa mahubiri, mafunzo na ufafanuzi wa kiroho kuhusu masuala ibuka nchini. Hapa CAK TV.
Tafakari njia zako.
Experience Christian television like never before.
What are we called to do to transform the world, to make it more Christ-like, and ultimately to Christianize?
We are Christian professionals placed by God in our different spheres.
CAK TV brings you news.
Ulimwengu unabadilika kwa kasi na kila dakika ya siku kuna jambo unalopaswa kujua.
Economic.
Ni mmoja tu wa wanabiashara ambao tumezungumza nao mtazamaji.
Health.
The egg from Kienyeji chicken is very good and people know that.
Be rest assured that health is wealth.
Faith, as well as national issues programs to nourish your heart, mind and soul.
We can bring the change that we desire in our country.
We look into political and governance matters and current affairs matters with a third eye.
We are called to multiply disciples. So there has to be disciple makers, and there has to be people that are willing to be those disciples.
CAK TV brings it all to you.
God bless you.
Losing a beloved one can be one of the hardest life experiences. Death brings a total change in many setups, the family taking a huge position. Death also provides an opportunity to celebrate the departed and their achievements on earth. CAK TV provides for you an opportunity to announce death and funeral at affordable fee. For more information, write to us, announcements@caktv.org, or you can call this number 0794 588 054. Welcome back and thanks for staying here with us on Power Brief tonight as we look into the 2022 political calculations in Kenya as the country heads to the general election. And tonight we have Mr. Philip Mwangale, Mr. Vincent Hono, and Mr. Edgar Kosgei trying to help us break down some of these things that matters a lot into this process of the general election. Gentlemen, there is something here that keeps on going and coming. We've had the BBI process, and the main thing that has really played out in this process is the issue of the issue of the structure of the government, the issue of the prime ministers, the deputy prime ministers, inclusivity, as they put it, that is the proponents of the BBI. But at the same time, as the case has moved into the Supreme Court, there is another attempt that is coming from the other side. That is by the Constitutional Implementation and Oversight Committee, which is led by Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, who is also our resident analyst here on Power Brief. And looking into it now, and the timelines that are remaining to the general election, is this process anchored in the law? Can it make it to become finally a law that we can have a prime minister, we can have 2 deputy presidents, we can have 2 deputy prime ministers as we come into the next general election?
I remember discussing this issue with Mheshimiwa Kioni the last time we were here together. And I mentioned then, as I will now, that trying to change the structure of the executive is futile in the present circumstances. There is no way we will change the structure of the executive within the timelines we have now. But that push to have that change even within the institution of parliament goes to show what really the upshot of the BBI process was. It was about sharing of power, not across the country or across the diverse communities that we have, but as amongst individuals that consider themselves at the forefront of the political landscape. That is just the plain truth. Some people would want to convince themselves otherwise, but we must really stick to the truth. But it is a futile exercise. It is, even if Parliament were to go ahead with that process and do what they could, we will still need to get to a referendum. Such changes cannot just go through Parliament. They are reserved for the people, and that has to happen at a referendum. So it's an exercise in futility. It could just be preparing or laying the ground for something that will come before the general elections, and this is only for the members of parliament. It has nothing to do with what the law says. It has nothing to do with what the constitution says. But in any case, if they decide to go through with the process, then we will have to meet at a referendum.
Thank you. Mr. Vincent, looking into what Mwangale said and what Honorable Kioni has been putting into place, and if I can quote him well, he talked of why they need to have these changes, one of it being giving the president powers to dismiss a deputy president, and probably some of the opinions were actually being related to the current event, whereby it's being viewed that the president and the deputy president are not reading in the same book. So according to you, are these laws being made with the people in mind, particular people, or for posterity?
Okay, we don't need to go back to Moi's era, the roadside declarations, where one would stand anywhere eating mandazi and declaring so and so is the vice president or the deputy president. There must be proper laws anchored in the constitution that defines how to get the deputy president. The constitution we are having is rated to be one of the best constitution. The only problem that we have is the implementation. So we are almost, or we are nearing election period. I can't say that if Parliament succeeds, God forbid, in the process, then they are targeting an individual. No individual is being targeted. But again, I think there must be an order on how governance is done, how to govern the country. There must be an order. The president should not have the power to appoint and disappoint the deputy at any time they wish. This deputy has a follower, this deputy has constituency, this deputy has merit, they were gotten under meritocracy, so they qualify. You cannot just wake up in the morning, then you tell the deputy, today you are fired.
Suppose the process of election changed, whereby if Mwangale is vying for presidency, they don't ask him to maybe bring out his running mate, but what will happen is that after the elections, he is at liberty to appoint whoever he feels and whoever he doesn't feel to work with, because sometimes it's viewed like, okay, you formed the government with Mwangale, but at the end of the day, when everything goes south, it is believed that is Mwangale, or they'll say Mwangale's leadership, not Mwangale and Hono. It's being said that a body has got one head. How about that argument?
There are two aspects to look at. One, it favors politicians because their prowess in bidding and the power in bidding increases. You go to community X and tell them secretly, I will pick my deputy from your community, and it's not in the constitution. Tomorrow you are in community Y and you tell them my vice will come from. So it will help politicians, especially the topmost politicians who are vying for the presidency, because they'll be able to bid, and they'll be able also to lobby, marshal, and convince communities in their secret meetings.
How about the end results? What we are really focused on is the end results, the stability of a country when you and Mwangale or you and Kosgei forms government.
I think almost, if I may just jump in, it's easy, and the Constitution has already a wonderful framework. If you have a deputy president who is going against a government, that is impeachable. The deputy president is impeachable. I think what the Jubilee government failed to do was to take such a step. But in any case, what the Constitution envisages is a scenario where you do not have, like we did in Jubilee 2013 and 2017, a presidential candidate opting for a deputy presidential candidate or a deputy president just because that individual has numbers. So it then goes to caution those who will be vying for president that do not just choose somebody for the sake of political matrix. Choose somebody that you know is a person of integrity, somebody that you know can toe the line when it comes to it. But if you do these marriages of convenience like Uhuru and Ruto did, you would end up in this position. So rather than change the structure, the legal regime around that entity that we call the presidency, let us look at the people that we are electing as president and deputy president. We will avoid so many of these things.
Thank you so much.
On that, most of the time, those who toe the line are never popular on the ground. Those who toe the line politically are never. Those who toe the line are always politically ambitious. So getting someone from a specific area with a big number, like my brother has said, that those who are vying for presidency next time should get people yet from a big community, but someone who will toe the line. From big community, if you get someone who will toe the line, they are not popular. You get someone who toes the line, they are politically ambitious. So they must have to. So it is very difficult to get someone.
Because let's have let's hear your take on these attempts first by the BBI, and this currently has been introduced into Parliament. Okay, it was introduced before, but it's now through the process.
You know, the whole amendment of the Constitution has been surrounding one person. Right now we're in Parliament trying to create a law that can remove this person. And we are creating a law that suits this situation here. You know, in future, we might require this law again to protect someone from being removed, now that we don't want someone who is seated here.
But there's a common saying that Vincent uses sometimes, that you only live once. So probably they could be focusing on the current situation.
The question is, why do you want to make it so easy to remove someone who can be impeached? There are people lying to us that Ruto cannot be removed from office. He can. But people want it so easy. And they want to just use a roadside declaration to get him to go home. Why don't you go to parliament and follow the process that is given out by the law? You know, he is impeachable. He is removable. And the law as it is right now is a good law. And it is one of the finest laws in the world.
Thank you, Kosgei. Now, this leads us to something important here in our discussion tonight. There are two factions that have come out very strongly as we move to 2022. One, we have Hustler Nation that is in under William Ruto, the Deputy President, and another one is Azimio la Umoja, this one of Raila Odinga. William Ruto is actually suggesting that fold your parties and let's have one party, national party. Raila hasn't been keen on that. That's why you see, even as we are talking right now, the Party of National Unity, that is the PNU, is somewhere there at Crown Plaza, and they are doing some declaration, actually fronting ODM as their candidate, and other parties have been coming. They have been coming as a party. But according to Ruto, and this is something that has even been bringing a tussle between him and Kuria, and the TSP fellow that is Mwangi Kiunjuri is talking of, let's come and form one party. At the end of it all, Mr. Mwangale, Vincent, and Kosgei, looking at our history, we've been from 2013 to 2010 under the new constitution. Which of these models do you believe can really try to bring some sanity in party politics in Kenya?
I think I've been on record saying that we really do not have political parties. We have small and medium enterprises, with the exception
MSMEs.
of SMEs, with the exception of parties like ODM and now Jubilee that have that command some kind of capital. But what is critical is the place of ideological political parties. Most of these parties, and the reason why you'd have certain individuals within that hustler outfit deciding to stick to their parties. It's not because they believe in multi-partyism. It's not because they believe in democratic tenets of governance. These parties are baskets for collecting arms, because they know that we would have something that we would use to bargain. If I have a party, then my bargaining power increases. It is not, it has nothing to do with multi-partyism. But it's also unfortunate that you'd have like what happened with Jubilee, and so many people were against the folding up of these parties and forming Jubilee, because you kill dissenting voices. It is good to have as many vehicles as there could be, so that those dissenting voices could be harbored within those entities that we are calling political parties. It is also possible to have the dissenting voices within the structures of an umbrella party like Jubilee, or I would go as far as comparing it with political parties in the United States. But we have not yet built such a structure. So where we are now, where our democracy has gotten to, we need as many voices as possible. So I do not agree that parties should fold up. If at all the ideologies meet up together, then they should. But then they should be very careful, because you have hyenas marching with the sheep.
Thank you. Now, that leads us into something, Mr. Kosgei, maybe before we get there. In summary, before we go to something that will lead us to the end of the show, time is catching up with us. Do you feel it's time we fold the parties and have two major parties, like what happens in some of the countries like the United States? Or you also join Mr. Mwangale in saying that let's grow step by step by having many parties coming together, probably forming an alliance, forming the government, and share whatever is available?
First, legally speaking, political parties are public. They are owned by the public. And taxpayers are the ones paying the political parties. If you look at the claim by ODM right now, they have, the government has a debt of around 7 billion shillings owed to ODM, and they need that money. So it is us paying the political parties. If we have small parties, each and every person in the country having a small party, then we will not have a government-owned party. You know, we should be having big parties that can run the agenda of the country, that can come together and...
So at an advanced stage later on, you'll tell us what you mean by big and small. Don't tell us right now. We will have that discussion on political parties later on. Thank you.
All right. Oh, yes, I was continuing. Anyway, in big parties like that, when you come together, there is party discipline. You saw with Jubilee, where the errand members were kicked out. There's party discipline, and there is also organization from within, and there is also you can be able to run your government efficiently. So the small parties mess up the country, and everyone looks for their direction. This is the direction, that is the direction. So it is better, in my thoughts. I have examined it and I have looked at it. It is better to have a big political party. And those pushing for the small parties to be involved in this big party, politically speaking, they might lose their quest. My thoughts.
Thank you on that. Lastly, there is this scramble. I don't know whether they have come to the level of partitioning, but what I know right now, it is a scramble for Mount Kenya votes. And the trips there by topmost politicians in the country have gone so high to a point of eliciting some debates of does votes from other regions, does it matter? This is what some of the comments that we meet in social media. But there could be a reason as to why every other politician wants to identify themselves with the voters from the Mount Kenya region, beginning from Mr. Mwangale. Their thoughts or what you've gathered, why politicians are trooping there?
It's numbers, and because it's very possible to get Mount Kenya votes as a block. You get a block vote, but it's unfortunate because every 5 years it looks as though it actually seems that we are electing the president of Mount Kenya rather than president of Kenya. Kenya is bigger than Mount Kenya. If Mount Kenya leaders, and I have to be very specific because people from that region do not think like the leaders. I think there's a very big shift that is happening and that has happened over the years. I meet individuals from Mount Kenya and they are also incensed that some leaders from that region are trying to front that region as being very special. If those leaders want, then let them elect their representative and let that representative then get into competition with the rest of the country. But we cannot treat a certain region special because they have certain numbers. They are also Kenyans, and the rest of the country is also as Kenyan as people from Mount Kenya.
Thank you. Mr. Vincent, what do you think is making Musalia, Raila, making Ruto, in fact, it's being, because Gay will tell us, he goes there until the other day he said that you cannot go there unless you pass through him. There was that thing that really went to the social media. It's something like that. We just saw it somewhere. What is so big?
So Mount Kenya region has not yet produced a serious presidential candidate for 2022 election. And it may not produce a serious one as of now. And that's why those who are now vying for presidency must eye Mount Kenya as a region because they know as of now they don't have a serious candidate. I think that's why there is that clamor. Then again, Mount Kenya is likely to have to divide because now that they will not have their own vying for presidency, they are likely to divide. They will not speak in one voice as compared to the previous elections where they've always been voting on one direction. So there is likelihood that this time round they will divide their votes, and that's why each and every presidential candidate are trying their luck.
Thank you. Kosgei, in summary, before we come into the parting shot, why, in fact, you spend most of your time there, you as a person. To a point you said you have to...
True. You see, Raila has not been going, let me be specific. Raila has not been going to the people of Mount Kenya. He just started that. He is targeting the tycoons of Mount Kenya. And it is good to be clear with that. And it is Raila who talked to the Mount Kenya Foundation. Those are tycoons for Mount Kenya who determine the direction, who used to determine the direction of Mount Kenya. If we thought that there are votes for Mount Kenya, then we would go to the people. But this person is targeting the tycoons. Now, when Raila was done with...
But he's been having rallies in
he just started.
They're road trips.
Yeah, road trips.
If they thought that people had the votes, they would have gone to the people directly down there. But when they got down interviewing Raila, they called Musalia. Musalia did not, according to what I know, did not apply to go there. It is Raila who went there. Now, my assumption is here. The system is held by the Mount Kenya tycoons. And Raila is keen to infiltrate the system. So do not tell me how the votes will be split, or you thinking the votes will be split. There is a fallacy, there is a lie in the political class that there is power being held by white-haired tycoons from the mountain. Wrong.
Thank you. Now, this brings us to something. As we come to the end, we'll begin with Mr. Mwangale, going to Mr. Vincent, and then finally Kosgei. The country has had a lot, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, that is for the past 2 years, and also the past 10 years, and even where we are tonight. There's a lot of talk regarding the economy, the ballooning wage bill, the issue of the foreign debt. But here there's another chance which everybody says that your vote really counts and it determines your future. You're parting shot to the country without maybe mentioning names, without throwing stones, just directing it. What should the people still do? Because life has to continue despite all that has happened.
I would say this, that the economic health of this country is not something that is up for debate. We are well aware, I mean, the pinch is being felt across the board, whether you are a little wealthy or whether you do not have quite much. Everyone is feeling the economic pinch. And that is the more reason why Kenyans should elect people who can deliver them from the economic morass that we are finding ourselves in. If we took the general elections as elections that are a springboard for participation in governance, as opposed to a census exercise that we have taken it to be over the years, then we would be better placed to elect better leaders. Because I think what has been happening in the past is people troop to their rural homes every general elections, going to vote for a member of parliament who will be legislating over your farm at home, over your chicken at home. Yet you belong to, or you spend most of your time in the capital city, for example, in Nairobi. So if we became deliberate and intentional about the people that we put into office, not because they are popular, not because they have ways of touching our hearts through handouts and whatnot, but because these are people who understand the problems of Wananchi, who understand where this country needs to be economically and in matters governance, then we will be on the path to setting this country to a prosperous future.
Thank you. In summary, in the few seconds, Mr. Vincent, your parting shot to...
I believe each and every presidential candidate will have got an economic model that they'll present to the electorates. I would just urge young men and women to come out, register, because their vote is their voice.
Thank you, Mr. Kosgei.
Mine also is to urge members of the public that the only way that you are going to run a country is through your vote. There is no other way. So your vote counts. I know there are many people who have not registered. So run and register. Don't go to the village. We are here in Nairobi and we are running in Nairobi.
Thank you.
Vote for us.
Much. That is Mr. Edgar Kosgei, a politician, an aspirant for a parliamentary seat.
Thank you.
Also with Mr. Vincent Ono, who is a policy and a political analyst, a legal scholar. Mr. Philip Mwangale, an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and a leadership and a governance consultant. Tonight, they've helped us to break down into some of these developments that are leading into the year 2022 general election. We appreciate your audience and your time and your feedback that keeps us going. For me, Cornelius Omuse, till next Thursday, God willing, I wish you a very good night.